Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
Gene Trowbridge and Jonathan Ney, founding partners of the top syndication firm, Trowbridge Law Group, LLP, have a legal team with over 50 years of combined experience in real estate syndication and the practice of real estate securities law. Over this time, Gene and his partners in several past firms and currently have helped clients raise close to $5 billion in offerings by empowering entrepreneurs to raise capital legally. To learn more about Trowbridge Law Group, LLP, visit their website at trowbridgelawgroup.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Terry Judge. Thanks for being on the show, Terry.
Hey, Whitney. Great to be on.
Terry is the founder and CEO of Core Solutions Group, LLC. Terry has an extensive entrepreneurial background with over 25 years in business ownership and is one of the early adopters of engineering-based cost segregation studies, as well as other highly specialized tax credits and incentives. He has a passion for educating people in the commercial and multifamily space on how to maximize cash flow and take full advantage of their ever-changing tax code. Today, Terry and his firm Core are blessed to work with so many of the top accounting real estate firms, as well as the brand new investor who just purchased their first multifamily investment property. Terry, thank you again for your time being on the show today. I'm grateful for your expertise and being willing to share with us. Give us a little more about, what Core Solutions Group does, what your focus is, and let's jump into just, kind of what cost seg is, and then some other things maybe the investor, doesn't know about.
Yeah, awesome. So Whitney, I started the company, going almost 15 years ago. So obviously the white hair, getting all this tax talk and digging to the tax code. We found this strategy 15 years ago kind of fell in my lap. My background was more engineering than tax and accounting, but ended up partnering with a gentleman from the old Arthur Anderson days, if you remember that. And he was an expert in the area of cost segregation, and he exposed it to me, and I just was blown away by it. So I immediately called my CPA. I said, Sam, what do you know about this? And he said, well, it's legal. I said, well, that's good. I says, but do you do it? You do it in house? And he says, no. And so I went down this path, and I started talking and asking CPAs, about cost seg. Nobody really understood it. Nobody in the community. This was, again, back in 2006. Very few CPA firms. Some of the big four, the big eight, were offering it to their big Fortune 500 companies. But I noticed that Middle America were not. They never even heard of this. It has kind of a funky name, right? I mean, so cost segregation. And so for about 15 years going forward, I just got real passionate about it. And I just saw this major gap in the tax code. There was just this major gap between the real estate investor, the CPA community, and the IRS. The IRS does a horrible job at educating about a loophole or a strategy. And there's just two pathways. At the end of the day, there's two pathways that an investor can go down. One is the straight line method, right, in the tax code. That is just, if we bought a multifamily property, it's going to depreciate over 27 and a half years. And that's great. You can still get some write-offs within that. And then there's another way in the tax code that is the accelerated method. And that is called cost segregation. And it has been in the tax code since 1969. And then it went away in 86. First, nobody knew about it in 69. Nobody really knew about it when it went away, so it wasn't that big of a deal, except the big boys. And then it came back in the beginning of the 90s under this cost segregation. The IRS actually lost two major tax cases, and Walgreens ended up suing the IRS. And they lost in the U.S. tax court. So it came back, but when it came back, still the crickets. Nobody knew about it. And finally, in 2004, they published the IRS technique and guidelines. And so we got involved in the business in 2006. So we had some basis to kind of follow. And we just, we started educating CPA firms, and I started speaking around the country, and that's really how we, kind of got involved in it. But again, I was not a CPA. Now I know a little bit more about the tax code than I want to admit, but it is ever confusing. And what's so powerful about it today is that it's the gift that keeps on giving. For whatever reason and for whatever party people are on, whatever side of the party you're on, it just keeps getting better and better, and it just keeps getting enhanced. So now I always tell like people that are coming in, they're buying their first multifamily property, do this as far as bring this in up front. Don't do this after the fact. Like cost segregation should be just as important as your banker, your tax attorney, your CPA. Have a cost segregation person with you to come to the table to help you plan out the improved cash flow on that property, because it truly is, especially if you're syndicating and you've got passive investors. They are going to want that depreciation on their K1s.
Could you just elaborate, just in a few sentences there? I mean, just for the listener, that I think most of the listeners have heard of cost seg, and probably understand slightly what that is. But just in case, could you just give us a sentence or two on just what cost segregation is? Sure.
Yeah. So basically, it is a form of accelerated depreciation. So the IRS allows a building to be broken apart into components. There's actually 9 components, and instead of buying an asset, let's say for $1 million. And, we're going to back out, let's say 20% for land, that building would depreciate. Everything from exterior to interior is going to depreciate, over 27 and a half years. Now with cost, and that's the straight line method. So the cost segregation method allows you to break apart the component by component by component. There's hundreds of components can now be broken out of what we call real property, moved into personal property under section 1245. And that allows these assets such as wiring, plumbing, irrigation, swimming pools, retaining walls, the interior build out, non-load bearing walls, all of the cost that essentially makes up the cost of the building to be written off now over 5 years as opposed to 27 and a half years. Okay, so therefore you can take the time value of money. The old saying is $1 today is worth $1 down the road. And why the heck would you let the IRS hold on to your money for 27 and a half years if you can get it in the first 5, where you can use that depreciation now to offset your income, therefore creating more cash flow for you and your investors. So it's pretty
I was going to say, what does that do
powerful
for the investor?
What's that?
I was going to ask you, and you were going into that, but I wanted to say, just what does that do for the investor? That's important for the passive investor to know, but it's also important for the operator or the future operator that's listening to know as well.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, it's just cash is king, and you're going to be able to take that depreciation against income now and in future years, because it has a 20-year carry forward, so it creates an open checkbook against ordinary income. And if you're at the high tax bracket, let's say 35%, that's huge to mitigate that. Use that money now, but that's going to be net money in your pocket that you're not paying Uncle Sam to grow the empire, to buy more buildings, and to leverage the beautiful thing of depreciation.
Nice. Okay, well, let's jump into some other parts of it. I know CARES Act, bonus depreciation, things like that, those terms are said quite often now, but it's like sometimes it's kind of confusing, right? You hear those terms and it's like, what in the world do those things mean? And let's just dive in a little bit.
So bonus depreciation kicked in on any property purchased on after September 27th, 2017. There's a little bit of confusion on when it actually kicked in. So any building September 27th, 2017 automatically qualifies for 100% bonus depreciation. And real simply, Whitney, so when you buy a building, you have different components. So even when we're doing a cost segregation study, you have your interior improvements, and all the interior of a building is 5 years, typically 5 and 7 years. And then also on all your land improvements, you're going to get a 15-year life, okay? And that's great. And we carve all that out, and that's and that's the world of cost seg. So income's 100% first year bonus depreciation. And just to keep it real simple, you now, instead of waiting 15 years or 5 years for those assets to be depreciated, the IRS now gives us a little caveat or a little bonus, and now you can now move that 15-year and 5-year life into your first year. So the first year that the property goes into service, you're going to be able to utilize, if you can utilize it all, great, 100% of that depreciation in year one. Very, very powerful. So to give you an example, you know, if you and I buy a building for $1 million, that first year depreciation, instead of getting about $27,500, because you're going to get 27.5. You're going to get 1% of 27.5% of you get $27,500. It's a tongue twister. And now with bonus, you're going to be able to jump that up to about $275,000 in your first year on that $1 million purchase. So imagine that. So if you have a down payment of, let's say, $250,000 to get into that property, you're pretty much, I mean, you're writing that your investment off in year one, and now you're off to the races, and that has a 20-year carry forward.
What does that do? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just finishing. I was just saying it's extremely powerful to be able to take all that depreciation in year one, and you still have the 20-year carry forward.
I was going to say, what happens after that? You know, if we do it 100% the first year, what happens year 2 through 5?
So you are using most of that depreciation in year one, but if you don't use it, it's gonna spill over into the future years. So that's great. There is a net present value tied to the money that you're taking in the early life of the building. So, you know, if we can write off 30%, if we can put 30% of that purchase price into shorter life, you still have 27.5-year property that we cannot write off. That still has to remain in long term, and you still get your small depreciation off of those assets that we cannot accelerate. Okay, but there is a point of, you know, on your depreciation schedules, because you've taken so much of it up front, then you're not going to get it down the road. It's a shell game. We're just moving it into the early life as opposed to waiting, as I mentioned. So still a big win-win.
Yeah. You know, maybe you could speak to also just, cost seg, for the, say, W-2, job earner, or that investor, or maybe whether they're active versus passive and offsetting income.
Yeah, this is just another powerful mechanism for tax planning for people that are still working corporate and they're looking to become a full-time real estate investor. So if you have X amount of hours per year that you're putting in, you're either considered an active investor or a passive investor. So passive investor would be somebody that's just investing. They're investing their money, let's say, into a syndication, and they're getting some depreciation and they're getting a nice ROI. For those of you that are active investors, maybe your wife or your spouse has W-2 income, or you still can be an active investor and still have W-2 income, or you have income coming in from other properties. You can use a cost segregation study to offset income from other income sources. So you can use it to offset W-2 income. If you're a high net worth, you're a high earner, but you're getting crushed with your W-2, and or other properties that you're investing in and that you have tax liability because maybe you've used all that depreciation in that particular year. Well, in comes your new property that we cost seg, and you get all this extra to use to offset other income, which is a game changer if you think about it, because now you might be able to quit that job much sooner because you're getting so much more, you'll be able to keep so much more of your income. So that is just amazing. That exists only for real estate investors. This is just, it's the best thing in the world.
What about, how long does it typically take to complete the study, and, when do investors, receive that benefit? Let's say, if a property closed in, let's say, December, beginning of December, are they still going to receive benefits for that year? If I don't, depending on when the study's done, things like that.
Yeah, so the very best time to do the study is right when the building goes into service. It always depends on, first it takes us about 30 days from start to finish to do a study. There's certain documentation that's required. Step one, we do a benefit analysis at no cost. So, we can just pinpoint the savings and get that all plugged in. So somebody that owns a property might just say, how much depreciation are we really going to get? We only paid $500,000 for the building. Is it worth us to move forward? And then therefore, it takes us, like I said, about 30 days. We do visit the property. So there is a process that we follow from start to finish. But depending upon if you're filing extensions or if you're going to be closing out your year on time, that's just all about planning. And a lot of times we'll approach a project, let's say, like you said, Whitney, maybe the project, they just bought a building, maybe they need some depreciation, let's say in 2020, but the renovations and the build outs won't be completed till 2021. And we will do a phase one, which we call that the as-built, which is basically the original building. And my client will say, Terry, carve this thing out. We need some depreciation. We need some write-offs for 2020. And then, so we'll do that. We'll just go in as the building is. Maybe there's certain things that are being removed from the building. We're going to be replacing roof, lighting, parking lot, all that stuff is pretty common. And then we can pick up the renovations on the backside. And then we can add it to the current cost seg, or we do a mini cost seg on the back. Just depends on how big the renovation projects are and what tax year, you're going to need that for. So it just a little planning on the timing of all of it, with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, for instance, if a project closes, late in the year, I mean, like coming up right now, and I know there's investors who are, they're doing tax planning and they're wanting to invest, in another deal or two before the end of the year. Are they still going to have time to have any benefit from a cost segregation study, in this year, for say on the K1 they're going to receive next March?
So you're saying that based on the timing, like we were just talking about, like toward the end of the year, can they still get,
right?
Are they still receiving the benefit for the same tax year? Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, they can still, again, it just depends on when they're filing, are they on time? Are they extending? But yeah, they can still get it, because especially towards the end of the year, people aren't, even if they're going to file on time, we got April, 15th. So we have plenty of time if somebody buys a building towards the end of the year right now to make that happen. So everyone's happy when the K1s, when the K1s come out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. What about, before we have to move to a few final questions, Terry, and just so the listener knows, I know this show is coming out after the election. And so, more now about some of those things than we do when we're recording this today. But, I'd like to just get Terry's opinion about, what he sees potentially happening, depending on if the election goes one way or the other.
Yeah, if anybody watched that debate last night, they're going to know that there's still going to be some serious divisiveness, even depending upon who wins or who loses. It's pretty much, at that point, we just do what we do, and I'm not going to go there in terms of political. But I will say that if Trump remains in office, depreciation, cost segregation, bonus depreciation, everything that's in the tax law currently will continue to go. Everything will be great. If Joe Biden wins, he's already been on record that he wants to squash some of the loopholes for the rich, as he calls it, and he's already mentioned 1031 exchanges will be gone, or he wants to eliminate 1031 exchanges. I think the accelerated depreciation would be next. How fast he does that, there's a lot of wealthy Democrats that own a lot of real estate that love cost segregation. And the reason why Trump pays $750 in taxes, whether that's true or false, is because he leverages the tax code and cost segregation. So, it's one of the most powerful tax strategies on the planet, or at least in the United States, for people to use. And I'm just encouraging my clients to, if you have buildings and you haven't done any cost seg studies on your buildings, I would encourage you to get them done, because we don't know how this is going to, we don't know how this is all going to play out. Nobody really does. So
what's the hardest part of completing the cost seg study or working with the operator? Is there, has there been times where it's like, we need to get this done, but it just doesn't happen for whatever reason?
So the hardest thing from, you're saying just interacting from the, what's the hardest thing that we as a company face?
Or just mistakes maybe an operator makes, that keeps it from getting done, or maybe they fail to get it completed.
I think from a standpoint of just getting them engaged, maybe they're hyped up on it and they want to move forward, but they fail to get us certain information. They fail to tell us that this was what they bought it with a 1031 exchange till after the fact. Because when you buy a building with a 1031 exchange, and by the way, they go hand in glove, but there's a timing and there's a planning around that. And then we find out, later they didn't want us to talk to their CPA for whatever reason, because they think their CPA is going to just bill them. And therefore we find out things after the fact that we've already done 90% of the work. Then we got to go and we have to kind of change our reporting. And so just getting the due diligence up front on both sides, setting the right expectations on both sides is critical. And we do that. So we spend a lot of time up front before we even take a retainer. That way everything works smoothly. We have a kickoff process. We get the CPA involved early on in the process, and therefore they almost 100% of the time they go very, very smoothly. So,
Terry, I believe anyone that's successful in business, especially in real estate, has a high level of self-discipline. How did you gain such a high level of self-discipline?
Oh man. I think it's critical, and if you don't, you'll struggle. I think you have to be consistent in your daily method of operation, whether that's getting up, mine's gratitude. I like to consume. I'm not a big book reader anymore. I like the audiobooks. I love podcasts. I'm trying to do my walks at night. The gyms have been closed, so it's been a little weird. That's throwing me off. I got the belly now, and I try to do my little dumbbells in the living room. But obviously, so gyms finally just opened in Detroit. We're at a 25%. So I'm trying to get my head back straight and get back. But I think just being consistent and being accountable. God, the older I fought this, Whitney, for so long, and now I realize that every step of the business to get to the next level, whether it's my golf swing, whether it's my business, whether it's my relationships, being held accountable, now having coaches in certain areas. I always fought it because I thought I could just do it myself, but the accountability piece to get to the next level in business and all in life is you have to be held accountable.
So coaches have been a big influence in that?
100%.
What about, are there any just daily habits that you have that you're disciplined about that have helped you achieve success?
Well, like I said, I think just getting up, having visual goals, having them written down, having them plastered around in your office. I think the universe is powerful. So when you can see it, touch it, feel it, and you're every day when you in the morning, like mine, I do gratitude, kind of relook at my goals. What are my my top 20 things that I have to get done today. And I do daily and weekly goals. I have the big thing here at the end of the month. So I don't try to push it off too far, like do 90-day goals. I try to do monthly goals and then break them down. It's amazing though, when you're in that mindset, and I fail, I don't do it. I slip, I get off track. I lose focus, and right now I'm kind of feeling burnt out. Like I feel like I need a vacation. I got to get away because I'm just in it. So got to recharge the batteries as well and make sure I'm on track. But yeah, I think just the daily, just being aware of what I'm trying to achieve, and then being accountable, but being appreciative as I go, man. And the other thing too is now getting older in life, it's not what you make anymore. It's really what you put away and what you save and what you invest in. And like I told you, I'm investing in multifamily. So I'm super excited about that next phase of my life. I want to be like you, man, when I get older.
What's a way you've recently improved your business that we could apply to ours?
Well, you're already far ahead. So I'm just now, I feel like I'm a little behind in the online world. I'm really working on that. And setting up. So I'm going to be launching my podcast very, very soon. What else can I say about that? Yeah, I think that's just trying to get my online presence. I think my self-brand, if the listeners are not doing that, I think that's something that they should start to think about. Everybody has kind of their secret sauce or a message that they could share with the world. And I think if you can build your personal brand around that, people want to hear from you, even though I have a hard time getting on video. Like, it just, for some reason, there's a block there. So that's one of my business coaches working with me, on that. So I would just say, as far as if you don't have a coach, really look into getting a coach in some of your areas and be vulnerable. So hopefully that helps.
Maybe we've already mentioned it, but I like to ask anyway, the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Consistency. Yeah, I would say that one word would be just showing up, every day, even when it gets tough.
And how do you like to give back?
I love giving back, man. I belong to a couple charities here locally. One's called Dream Centers. We just held an event. We had to fight through the COVID thing. It was kind of weird. And, we were going to cancel it, and we didn't. And we fought through, and we set up a venue that was kind of outdoors. And we raised a bunch of money for the Dream Centers, which is just helping people, the homeless. And we have a city that just got devastated over the last 20 years. And it's smack dab in one of the wealthiest counties. It's like literally right next door to Oakland County here in Detroit. So that's I love being able to help and give support to that organization.
Nice. Well, Terry, I'm grateful for how you give back in that way and how you're giving back to us today also. Just going through the basics of what a cost segregation study is, but also how that can help the investor, in big ways and what that does for us and maybe the potential effects of the election as well. And so just grateful for your time and just sharing your expertise in this business. Tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Oh, great. Yeah. So, well, first of all, Whitney, thanks for having me on the show. I really enjoyed it. Getting to know you as well. So, but they can get a hold of me on any of the social media feeds, LinkedIn. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And then also, I'll provide you my email would be good if they want to write this down. So it's tjudge@coreadvisors.net. CORE and then advisors.net.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.